When you go shopping, watch TV, read a magazine, or walk through the city, how well do you pay attention to the assault of logos that invade your space? Have you noticed the same symbols that show up in thousands of logos? Or have you fallen into a media-induced slumber, accustomed to the assault? Humanity has been conditioned by symbolism, and today we are bombarded by logos. The average American is exposed to 600 commercial messages each day. Some symbols and messages we recognize, and some we don't. And what we don't understand can be used against us. Are corporations knowingly playing on your subconscious needs and desires? Major marketing companies have developed techniques on how to target what they call the reptilian brain.
Absolutely crucial to understand what I call the reptilian hot button. My theory is very simple. The reptilian always win. I don't care what you're going to tell me intellectually, give me the reptilian.
And don't think that it stops there. Religious organizations, governments, astrologists, secret societies, non-profits, and health organizations clearly understand the effectiveness of symbolism to communicate a message. Political campaigns are using subliminals in their ad campaigns. The entertainment and gaming industries know that symbols have emotional power and they play on it. The question is, do you know? Keeping the language of symbols in mind, what is really being said with these logos? Let's talk logos and explore designs from a variety of successful companies. The Starbucks logo, a mythological half-woman typically called a siren. The half-fish, half-woman variety is usually known as a mermaid. According to the ancient Greeks, sirens seduced mariners with songs and promises of sex and then killed them. The original cigar band Starbucks logo had a slightly altered version of the 15th century twin-tailed siren, Melusine. In the legend, Melusine agreed to marry a man on the condition that she be left alone one day a week to do as she pleased in private. After some years, the man became jealous and broke into her room. There he discovered that his wife assumed the form of a mermaid. Angry that he broke his promise, Melusine transformed herself into a dragon and departed in a shrieking fury. He never saw her again. Heckler Associates, the design firm behind the Starbucks logo, modified the logo at a few points in the company's history. The first time was when they were designing the first Starbucks delivery trucks. The logo was huge, and so the attention went to certain areas on the mermaid. Heckler said he was getting some flack about the mermaid looking pregnant, so he redrew her belly button to appear as a question mark. It remained that way for a year or two. Heckler also redrew her hairstyle to cover up her breasts. As Starbucks expanded across the country, the number of letters from women complaining about the siren's risque pose grew, and so he made further changes. Then came the more familiar green version of the logo. The chest was hidden, but the belly button and only a hint of the tails remained. Stars were also added. In Portland, Oregon, we saw a new type of siren on the Starbucks sign. She only had one tail. Perhaps the image of a fish woman spreading her tails is on its way out. What is this powerful attraction to the mermaid that is so compelling? The mermaid claims a long and rich ancestry that dates back to a multitude of fishtail gods and goddesses from some of man's earliest civilizations. The sea, as womb of creation and the source of wisdom, has always played an important role in world beliefs. The gods of the sea are among some of the most powerful in history. Their strength lives on in a host of entities, symbolic of the shifting, ever-changing, dual nature of the sea as both life giver and destroyer. Ever since man first set to sea to deliver coffee and spices, sailors have tried to ensure safe passage by attempting to make peace with unpredictable water gods by mounting a mermaid on the ship's figurehead. Years later, the mermaid and siren images started appearing during World War II in the form of nose art on thousands of bombers and fighter escorts. Mermaids have beckoned the adventurous to the unknown and the promise of forbidden fruits. In numerous tales told of them, they would often foretell the future and give supernatural powers to human beings, or fall in love with human beings and entice their mortal lovers to follow them beneath the sea. Wells, springs, rivers, and lakes were sacred places in many cultures. Sacred waters are traditionally haunted by various female spirits, suggesting suppressed memories of a goddess. The water habitat symbolizes fertility, mystery, purification, reflection, motion, life, power, and the subconscious. In many of the mermaid and siren myths, the protagonist dissolves into the depths of the water. Behind the seductive image of the siren lurks the metaphor of death and metamorphosis. We were born of the water and have transmuted into the human form. Carl Jung suggests that supernatural forces spring from the fusion of two biologically different entities, opposites that embrace and explain practically everything. Jung believed symbols materialize on their own account in our dreams, the expression of which is beyond the dimensions of time and space and in the sphere of unspecified and unlimited. These symbols possess a numinous character and impress themselves on the general consciousness, disturbing for those minds used to operation within the limits of logic and rationality. He says we can suppose that primordial images, sediments of accumulated memory, collective input have a life of their own, independent of single individuals. Jung also observed, a symbol always stands for something more than its obvious and immediate meaning. Post-Freudian thought had exposed the legendary fish-tailed seductress as the personification of the hidden desires of the sexual subconscious, symbolizing primitive castration anxieties and the urge to return to the amniotic waters of the womb. For the medieval church, the harlot mermaid personified the unnatural desires which stood between a man and his chance of salvation. Lilith, the one goddess with 1,000 names, is one of the most popular identities in human culture. She dates back as far as 2,000 years BC as depicted by the Sumerians. In other depictions, Lilith is represented as a beautiful woman from the waist up and as a snake from the waist down. Lilith typically symbolizes rebellion, rage, and an untamed sexual nature. She is also known as a Sumerian demon, a seductive succubus, the bride of Satan, and Adam's first wife. Barbie was copied from a German adult doll by the name of Lily. Now young girls today can buy Mermaid Barbie or go see The Little Mermaid. The powerful role that mermaids, goddesses, and sirens continue to play in our culture confirms the depth of their identity in the human experience and our collective unconscious. They embody themes that are always with us, but not often on the surface of our daily experience and perception. There is a Kurdish proverb that says, "He who wants pearls has to dive into the sea," and a Russian proverb that says, "Not everything is a mermaid that dives into the water." The Song of the Siren calls us to hurl into the deep, to transform, to die to self and emerge into a new form with new knowledge and understanding. All of this when you drink a Starbucks coffee.
Thank you for calling Starbucks Customer Relations. We hope to provide easy access to Starbucks information most important to you.
Thank you for calling Starbucks. My name is Marvin. How can I help you today?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the logo. Is there any history or meaning to it?
There actually is. Starbucks came from the book Moby Dick. It was Captain Ahab, I believe. It's basically like the name evokes the romance of the high seas and the seafaring tradition of the early coffee traders. Now, the logo itself is based on the old 16th century Norse woodcut of a two-tailed siren. So that's where the logo and name came from.
Do I look like I'm
Symbolism. Do you know anything about this logo?
Well, I have no idea who that is, no. I just know that it's Starbucks. That's all it means to me. When I see the logo, then I think about this place, and what I think about this place is somewhere nice to relax and comfortable. It makes me feel warm inside.
Yeah, she's a siren.
I thought sirens were evil.
So maybe you feel comfortable and like you can relax and it's a watering hole because of her.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
What do you think about that idea?
Now I can see that.
Yep. And apparently there is some controversy before because it kind of, she's kind of spread open.
Oh, now you bring that to my attention.
Unfortunately, we can't film in here.
Okay, so you can't comment on the logo
We just
either?
want to know where it came from. We're doing a show on corporate logos and symbolism in the logos.
And Apple is such a big, big brand.
They don't tell you about it in training or anything?
Well,
about
no,
the logo
we have
or anything?
we have the previous history and everything like that, but there isn't really much emphasis focused on like ideological symbols and things like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I could almost ask my manager if there's anything behind it, but I don't know whether he'd know either.
Thank you for calling Apple. This is David. How can I help you today?
I wonder if you know anything about the Apple logo and what that means.
Good question.
Do you know anything about the history of the logo?
A little bit.
I heard somewhere, someone told me that it might be a reference to, Newton's apple. I heard another person say that it might actually be a reference to the apple from the Garden of Eden, considering that it has a bite taken out of it. What do you know?
Speculation to both of those. The bite of the apple, meaning the first bite.
The forbidden fruit.
Right. But it's actually more in line with Newton's apple.
When you come work for Apple, you don't get a little lesson in that?
Well, either way, it wouldn't be something that I would be able to discuss on the phone. I could certainly get you some history and send it to you, if that would be helpful.
Sure, that would be interesting, but it's nothing you can tell me now over the phone?
No.
To find the meaning of the Apple logo, it is best to start at the beginning. Apple was founded April 1st, 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak and Ronald Wayne. The computers were hand-built by Wozniak and first shown to the public at the Homebrew Computer Club group in Palo Alto, California. The Apple I went on sale in July 1976. A local computer dealer saw it and ordered 100 units. About 200 Apple Is were built and sold over a 10-month period for the symbolically unsettling price of $666.66. Apple's first logo was designed by Steve Jobs and drawn by Ronald Wayne, depicting Sir Isaac Newton sitting under an apple tree. The words Apple Computer Co. were drawn on a ribbon banner ornamenting the picture frame. The frame itself held a quotation from Wordsworth, "Newton, a mind forever voyaging through strange seas of thought alone." Sir Isaac Newton was an English physicist, mathematician, astronomer, natural philosopher, alchemist and theologian, and is considered by many scholars and of the general public to be one of the most influential people in human history. Newton's scientific work may have been of lesser personal importance to him, as he placed emphasis on rediscovering the occult wisdom of the ancients. He is probably best known for his work on universal gravitation. He built the first practical reflecting telescope, and he developed a theory of color based on the observation that a prism decomposes white light into the many colors that form the visible spectrum. Perhaps this is why Apple later transitioned from their original Newtonian logo to the more familiar rainbow apple. A prism is a triangular or pyramidical transparent optical element, usually made of glass, that refracts light. It's used to break light up into its constituent spectral colors, creating the colors of the rainbow. This is something Newton worked on and developed in his work on optics. Is this Apple's way of telling us that they are of the light, enlightened, or in some way manipulating light? Perhaps continuing the work of other people from the Age of Enlightenment, the Illuminati. The question is, are they illuminating our minds using technology? In 1977, Rob Janoff, working for Regis McKenna as an art director, was tasked to redesign Apple's logo. Regis McKenna Incorporated helped start several Silicon Valley firms during the 1970s and 80s, including America Online, Electronic Arts, Intel, Microsoft, and many others. Although Steve Jobs and the designer Rob Janoff came out of the hippie culture, Rob said in an interview that the rainbow color was used because the Apple II was the first home or personal computer that could reproduce images on the monitor in color, so it represents color bars on the screen. Also, it was an attempt to make the logo very accessible to everyone, especially to young people, so that Steve could get them into schools. Another source stated that Steve wanted the rainbow colors because it humanized the company. Jean-Louis Gasset, the executive at Apple Computer from 81 to 90, was asked about his thoughts about the Apple logo. He answered, "One of the deep mysteries to me is our logo, the symbol of lust and knowledge bitten into, all crossed with the colors of the rainbow in the wrong order. You couldn't dream of a more appropriate logo: lust, knowledge, hope, and anarchy." In the beginning, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were building and selling the Apple I computer from the Jobs family garage on 2066 Christ Drive, Los Altos, California. The question is, where did these kids get the idea to build and sell computers? Wozniak was early on interested in technology, and he went to work for Hewlett-Packard in Palo Alto. Jobs held a summer job there, and later he took a job at Atari to save money for a spiritual retreat to India. So how influential was the hippie movement, drugs, the counterculture, LSD, acid when it comes to the creation of Apple? At a time when most computers were big as houses and only could be found in an industrial environment. Jobs got stoned for the first time during a high school summer, he told Playboy magazine in 1985. You could get LSD fresh made from Stanford. He and his girlfriend often visited a commune called the All One Farm. He practiced vegetarianism and experimented with more restrictive diets, such as eating only fruit. The two Steves, Jobs and Wozniak, were outcasts while they were in high school. By 1975 they had withdrawn from Reed College and UC Berkeley respectively. Cultural historian Theodore Roszak made the point that the Apple computer emerged from within the West Coast counterculture. Eventually, the rainbow colors in the Apple were replaced by a monochrome theme, still with the light shining behind it. But more interestingly, let's look at the byte in the Apple logo. According to the designer Rob Janoff, it is not a reference to the computing term byte. A byte is 8 bits. A bit or binary digit can be used to represent two states of information: 1 or 0, on or off, true or false, male or female, ignorance or knowledge. How about good or evil? The more bytes, the more intelligence, the more information you can store or process faster. What fruit is the apple referring to anyway? Is it Newton's apple that fell onto his head when he got the idea for how gravity works. Many have speculated that it's a reference to the father of the modern computer, Alan Turing, who was imprisoned on charges of homosexuality in 1952. He was first subjected to chemical castration, treatment with female hormones, and in 1954 he eventually killed himself by taking a bite of a cyanide-injected apple. And Alan Turing's favorite childhood story was Snow White, where she falls asleep forever for eating a poisoned apple, to later be woken up by a prince. Maybe it's a reference to the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. The bite taken out of it would suggest that it is. If this is a reference to the apple from the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, then what does that make the apple company? Eve, the serpent, or maybe the knowledge itself? Malum in Latin means both apple and evil. Is Apple aligning themselves with the adversary, the Antichrist, the snake, or Lucifer, the rebel and liberator of God's monotheistic tyranny?
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives we have created for the first time in all history. A garden of pure ideology where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
In the 17th century, the word apple was used as a generic term for all foreign fruit. Tomatoes were called love apples, cucumbers earth apples, oranges were called golden apples, and the psychoactive substance datura was called thorn apple. The plants told us, Jeremy Norby says in his book The Cosmic Serpent. In particular, the plants communicate directly through images, feelings, and language during ayahuasca, datura, and tobacco-based ritual sessions. Could the hallucinogenic thorn apple, the fruit of the datura plant, be the real fruit from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden? Entheogenic drugs have a long history of getting the user in contact with the cosmic serpent. When the designer was asked in an interview, is it a reference to the biblical event when Eve bit into the forbidden fruit? He said, it's all BS, it's a wonderful urban legend. Somebody starts it and then people go, oh yeah, that must be it. Even when he was asked in a follow-up question, is it possible you were influenced subconsciously by these stories? He said, well, I'm probably the least religious person, so Adam and Eve didn't have anything to do with it. The bite of knowledge sounds fabulous, but that's not it. Our question is, how can he not be aware of one of the most famous stories in Western and Middle Eastern history? Furthermore, acting subconsciously would not be something that you would be conscious of. What can be suggested is that something even more sinister, even more mysterious, is unfolding behind the scenes of humanity's inventiveness and creativity. Small nudges and subtle yet powerful suggestions might be given to us from places and dimensions we're not yet so familiar with. So it doesn't have to be a conscious conspiracy on the part of the creators and designers to weave this subtextual narrative into the simple logo. But it could be echoes of something bigger than that, working through them. The story finds its way into popular culture and continues to renew itself in modern times. It could be argued that there is a message in everything, and the message is there if you're clever enough to find it. And yes, we know that Steve Wozniak is a sworn member of the Freemasons, initiated in 1980 in the Charity Lodge number 362 in Campbell, California. But by 1980, Apple's and Steve Wozniak's success was already established. Apple's logo had already been designed and gone through the major overhaul. The Woz have said that his reason for joining was to be able to spend more time with his wife at the time, Alice Robertson, who was a member of the Order of the Eastern Star, a fraternal organization that both men and women can join. He says he quickly rose to a third-degree Freemason. He says that although he took the necessary oaths and is a lifetime Freemason, he doesn't actually put a whole lot of stock in the mystical and religious overtones of the oath or the order. So the question is what influence joining the Masons had on him and Apple.
I don't profess to be a fantastic esoteric expert, but I've seen variations of this where you have the cobra, which I always thought related to the reptilian brain, and something I was saying about earlier, which relates to the solar consciousness that has been tapped into and probably relates to right brain activity. But this is the wing, isn't this the wings of Isis or the wings of Horus? And it seems to animate some idea of higher levels of consciousness, but at the same time some sort of understanding of the fact that the reptile and the solar symbol goes together, doesn't it, throughout history? The shell logo is the same, isn't it? Isn't the shell logo more of a rising sun than a fossil?
No originality, right? I mean, why is it always the wings and the sun disk, the sun, the pyramid?
Well,
always.
I think with all of the symbols, they're part of the matrix programming, aren't they? They're part of the codes which speak subconsciously, and they're also leaving their mark in this reality at the same time. So you won't get the individualism in that sense, because very much of what we call reality has been infested by symbolism. So that's why there's a common ground across everything, which goes way back into the ancient world. The use of the lion, for example, on the MGM, with the Lion of Judea, the constant use of wings and solar wings relates back to the Egyptian brotherhoods and the Freemasonic structures. So the whole of society, almost at the highest pinnacle, is coming from those areas. I mean, cars were invented by Freemasons, weren't they?
Yeah, and the Mercedes gang, the Daimler Mercedes, were into weapons and all of that kind of thing beforehand, you know. And if you study the Mercedes logo, that's actually a subliminal squaring of the circle. If you take what looks like a trident, right, part of the Mercedes logo, it's actually the corner of a cube inside a circle. And that's why a lot of logos, like the Volkswagen logo and others, have a circle around it, because and Lexus is actually the angle of a pyramid or a triangle, but they just put the circle around it because something about the mind is like scoping in on that one area, which then obscures what they don't want you to see, but your full mind, your full conscious mind sees the cube in the circle and all the symbolism that implies. And in fact, if you go to the earliest Mercedes logo, it was actually a triskelion. It was 3 interlocking circles. And then they morphed that into the famous logo that they have now. And even the dimensions of those 3 lines, you know, how many degrees there are. There's a connection to, you know, sacred numbers and things like that. So geometry is involved, sacred geometry, color, talismanic symbolism.
Do you think these companies are hiring people and telling them exactly what symbols to use, or is the artist just running with it on their own?
They have their own artists. They have the whole of Hollywood is full of artists.
Right.
And a lot of them are from the inside. They're not from the outside. They're not outsider artists.
No.
These people are in the know. They are the shamans and the Da Vinci's of today. So this is no surprise that they're using this language and this symbolism, because it's the symbolism that's been used for thousands of years.
It's not just a symbol. It's an actual invocation of the serpent power. So you can feel that power coming up the spine and coming up here.
To me, it's also that energy, or everything is potential, isn't it? It's neither good nor bad until we choose how to use it or how it's going to influence us.
Logos are neither good nor bad. It's what they do with them. It's what we do with them. That's what makes the difference.
The very word logos, right, has many ancient permutations leading back to logos. The primordial logos is picked up as lugal or lu in the Welsh, and then you have the Sumerian version. But the word in Latin had many permutations. A lawyer was known as logos. The word to speak. In fact, that's what in the Bible they say the logos is the word, right? So logo means word, symbol, because we know that behind the word of God was always the symbol of God. You have to have an idea of something before you can manifest it. The thing that people find difficult is how come then, even with the use of this esoterica, it will actually sell a tube of toothpaste or a bar of soap, right? Even if you put billions behind it and you put it on big massive billboards and marquees, people can't connect that. It wouldn't sell you a damn thing if this oligarchical Black Lodge had not raped you first of the very things that you're missing, so that you feel that through the simulacra or surrogate form, i.e. a girl draped across a Ferrari, a beautiful sunsets and beaches, and all the elusive, alluring mystique that they've created, your hand wouldn't move towards it if you weren't already spiritually and emotionally raped. You're attracted to it through these ancient symbols, which are part of the race memory, as I am saying. You have this in churches, with the doorways being shaped like the vagina for the sexual tantric higher union. You have the baptism waters being slightly salted to represent the uterine waters. You have the chalice and the bread representing, again, other very powerful archetypal ideas of androgyny and chemical wedding. And you have these guys dressed around in women's clothes. As Leo said, murdering, suppressing, butchering, torturing, whipping the real thing and keeping them under suppression, but then donning the symbols of their power and saying, I am it, with their vagina head, dresses, and bloody flowing robes. And that's what this whole corporate thing is. It's a form of plagiarization, exploitation, confiscation, and ultimately colonization of the mind. The X represents the female, the X chromosome, right? Y is the male, and X is female. So in many female products, especially cosmetics, you'll see the X. X is also sacred. X is in sex. But the X is also very important. You'll have a lot of cars with just an X, or LX, or XL. These are phonemes. That feminizes a product. When you put X on it, it feminizes it. Other symbols will masculinize it. So man will be attracted to something with the X on it, or the O, right? The big O, because that's the ovum.
The Renault Clio. The car, the feminine, it's aimed for women, clitoris. The Lexus, leisure, sex, success. Ever since then, it has actually made me think, when I look at logos, of what I'm being drawn into.
They then reverse it, and the moment that you reverse anything, it now appeals to your subconscious mind more than it does when it's conscious. So there's a whole cult of tweaking a thing so that it loses its conscious appeal. This is part of an occult thing designed by the Occult Brotherhood. It's not just Madison Avenue in Hollywood doing it because they want to sell bars of soap and Ferraris. It's deeper than that, The knowledge gives you the ability to spot on sight, right, what looks like it's deadly, and avoid it, and do more than that, which is either use the symbols yourself to empower yourself and your companies, right? Because this knowledge was taken from the good people in the first place anyway. The evil may be using it, but they've stolen it from those who once used this as sacred. So it's our honor, we're honor bound to take it back and use it to empower ourselves. There's nothing evil about a G, there's nothing evil about a cross, there's nothing evil about 666.
We don't live without buying stuff. But if we take back our consciousness, we can select what we buy and where from.
Corporatism today, they think it's all a new thing. There's been nothing but corporatism from the time of Egypt onwards. It's a giant brotherhood.
Symbols are the language of the subconscious mind, and it's the subconscious mind of global Babylon. It's their language. They've owned that language. They've milked the minds of the shamans, taken their language, and they've adopted it and used it and done other things with it. So they're speaking great truths through the symbols, but not necessarily helping you to empower your truth through the symbolism. You have to find your own connection to the subconscious to do that. It's almost becoming a way of reading codes. None of it is secret anymore.
We're talking about mass hypnosis. Coming out of a mass hypnosis is about self-esteem. Our defense against this is our self-esteem. When we truly value ourselves, these don't have any power.
They're using something intensely sacred as a means to communicate their filth. Because the moment that you desecrate anything holy, that's a crime for which you will end up having to pay. Right? And I believe that the time of awakening is part of the payback.
Just something about Egypt. It's dawned on me that we're still in Egypt. We haven't left Egypt. Well, some of us have. There is an exodus that will take place, but everything about the world that we live in, its symbolism, the logos, the structures, the hierarchy, the trinkets, the governance, the pharaohs, the kings, the queen. We're still in Egypt.
I always describe it as the difference between magic and sorcery. The magic is when you're dealing with almost exactly the same type of activity, meaning communicating to somebody behind their conscious volition. But you're doing it for the ultimate uplift of their soul. Then you have the sorcery where you're doing exactly the same thing. In other words, the technique is identical. It's like having a golden sword. You can either cut onions with it or you can use it for what it's for. So the dark side, they use it for the bringing down of mankind.
We live in a hall of mirrors with some very clever and rather dark people pulling strings, but that's just how it is. The question only to me is then, what do we do with it? They will reap their own rewards in time. It's not my business to see anybody else reaps their reward. That's the collective, the spirit's business. How do I work within and live happily and joyfully within a society that's completely crazy, that's doing bonkers things, and not get caught in it?
For me, I think the key with this is that, as this lady said, that the collective, the idea that the memory goes back before our birth and we inherit a collective memory. We inherit these symbols psychologically, emotionally, and these people are, as a number of people have said around the table, sequestering that information. So they could invent new shapes, new symbols, new whatever, but instead they use things that are embedded already within us. So the resonance that is created with recognition of that symbol is the draw, basically. So we don't necessarily be interested in Whirlpool or GE, but the spiral is embedded within us. So I think that each shape holds resonance. If you create a triangle, if you create a circle, you can hold a resonance in it. So it's like a machine. A shape is a machine. So I think the inoculation against this is to be conscious of the mechanism, is to understand how it works. So once you understand that a shape can hold a resonance, then that resonance's effect is lessened, is diminished. Maybe not completely eradicated, but diminished. So the way to understand this is to A, bring it into your consciousness, and B, is to go to a place where there are no symbols, into the wilderness, where there's no text, no right angles, no geometry in the artificial sense, and the only geometry that's there is organic, is curved, is completely from the central pure sapphire emanation, as I would put it. Shapes in themselves are no problem, but if you don't understand what they mean, you are subject to something that is somebody else's paradigm, somebody else's construct. So consciousness is the first thing to break through, and then to give oneself a holiday from that, to take a break from it, to go to somewhere where there isn't any. Move in a space where there is nothing. There is nothing, there is just nature. Is incredibly instructive as to what power these symbols have, because the kind of natural charge of the body increases, and that drain, even to see them, even if you don't actually perceive them as such, even to bring it into your field of perception, has a draining effect on the body. If you live in a city, if you're not conscious of that, you're always operating on empty. And so when you're on empty, as if you were in a fearful state, you're highly suggestible.
Your consciousness is vast, it's infinite, it sees way beyond all of this. It sees everything that exists. You're here and everywhere simultaneously. So why would this have any hold over you if you saw from a vantage point like that?
Because that's our challenge, is to awaken that other consciousness. And when that other consciousness is asleep, this can own us. And then we become an ordinary person.
What we're forgetting here is that for each of us, consciousness incarnates, and an astrologer, from the moment you're born, can map the kind of deal that you've been played. So when you step back, zoom out, and you realise everyone's doing that, then there is a kind of collective game, that there's an evolving humanity. Now, this is an old story that we're still playing.
There's a thing called identification with the object of your hate, or identification with the master. By digesting their pus and their filth and their toxicity, you become addicted to that. We ingest it, and because we don't have the pure thing, we then become dependent. We gain a taste, a palate for slop.
The thing with arches and their use is that because they have unlike some other symbols which will be purely metaphysical, arches are obviously indicating something physical. So they step over from one world to the other, from the unmanifest in the mind to the physical object as well. And obviously a door or an entranceway is always used as like an agreement to enter into an arena or into a state of mind or a level of consciousness. And yet, when you see them used, as we've got here, the Arc de Triomphe in Paris or the New York-Washington Arch, they're very, very particular in that they're styling the Roman arches and Greek arches, which any historian will tell you were always placed in a city that had just been under conquest. So it was a gateway to the whole Roman way of life, or Roman way of doing things, perhaps. The arch, being an entrance or a doorway or a symbol of ownership or protectorship of an era. Most of the corporations, like we've got arch studios here, we have them at the entranceway to parks and things. They're a symbol of strength. They're a symbol of ownership. And as we said, it compiles all of these things with you're entering into an agreement if you enter under one of these arches.
Especially Citibank.
All of the banks.
Do you think that the use of the arch in corporate logos, that it pervades that message of strength and even victory to the subconscious almost, that the people who agree to buy these products and sign up with these corporations, that they feel that on some level as well? But what do you think it portrays?
No, I think that's definitely one part of it. It's been a make-up of the social mindset for so long, with all of these buildings of status and power and importance. That people do actually feel safer with this template or this blueprint being implied to them, at least. Especially when it comes to something like their money or their security, or in the case of Motorola, their communication. Usually, within arches that are used in corporate symbology, they use the feminine arch the majority of the time, because it's to do with a way of interacting with the subconscious of the viewer as well. The primary thing with all of these forms of advertising, where they take these symbols from the ancient world and use as a sacred symbol, the symbol which is naturally going to have the most power is the one which has been in the collective psyche for the longest period of time. Some people say that there's no creativity within the advertising world, and this is just kind of ridiculous. They understand...
They use them over and over and
Precisely,
over again.
well, because they understand what primal shapes are going to speak to people the quickest and in the most efficient way. Hence, road signs, the world over, are almost always the same shapes, colours, sizes. Yeah, a square or an octagon seems to imply stop in a lot of countries.
Yes.
And isn't that fascinating? How a very just a basic geometry has a whole message which a whole culture associates with it, or perhaps a whole continent. And it doesn't need to be an inside joke at all. Perhaps the inside joke is we know how to get to your consciousness, and you haven't got the first clue why we seem to repeat ourselves.
Do you think the symbol of the female or the mother is important for that reason as well, like you said before, in terms of the nurturing, giving symbol?
Absolutely, it does seem to be that we're so used to having the carrot and the stick kind of way of interacting with us as a public that the government, generally with their symbology, they do the opposite to using the feminine touches. Usually they're very authoritative. They use linear angles and right angles and shapes like this a lot more. Throughout corporate symbology there's a real mixture. But, just in these two examples that we're seeing here, with the arches and the vesica, the corporate world does definitely understand that these are subconscious longings as well that we have for the mother figure and for the maternal. And you've heard advertising execs talk about what they want to do with their branding is to create a cult following.
Yes, that's right.
And if you're going to do that, you're going to have to be offering people something that they want. And if they don't want a new credit card, they do still want, that missing aspect of the feminine in their lives. So they're still drawn to these symbols. It's incredible.
We used to see it in churches, so we went there. But now we see it in the corporate world, so we go there now.
Church of Scientism became the Church of Corporatism, because science was what was responsible for changing all of our industry so that we could have this corporate world. It's kind of like a baton to hand over, but still the real religion is a veiled one. But the religion of the masses is the worship of Mammon himself, the deity of money and power. Definitely. So I don't think that people's kind of want of status is going to change anytime soon. I think that's why these guys stick with the same methods. It's worked for thousands of years, worked for the cults. Let's go for it, guys.
If we look at some of the architecture in a magnificent place like this, there's a few symbols that come up in terms of the vesica Pisces, two circles interlocked. And if we look at the middle symbolism, in some cases you can even see halfway, like a church arch or the entrance into the church is like a half vesica Pisces. So sometimes Jesus is depicted in a double circle like that.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's any significance to that in terms of symbolism, or if it means anything to you?
I don't.
You don't?
It doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, I've often seen the three circles. We're three circles.
Yeah.
And then the centre bit is the Trinity.
The
so you've
Trinity,
got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
If we look at, obviously there's the sun cross, right? And sometimes we have the sun behind Jesus.
See, that's a halo.
Yes.
But it's nearly always the sun probably is used to depict the light, because Jesus has the light of God in our lives. So light tends to be the happiness, the joyfulness.
Yeah. Do you think it's also a universal symbol, considering how much it pops up in so many more ancient civilizations
I
as well?
think it probably has, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the symbolism has come from ancient times. A lot of the symbolism that we have in the Christian church comes from the Hebrew church before that.
People who have equated that the story of, I just want to get your personal take on this, equated the story of Jesus as a kind of an astrological, symbolic story, that he's a representative of the sun in that sense. I don't know if you've heard about that before.
I've not heard of
You have
that.
not
No.
heard about that?
But I have heard about, and I heard about it this last weekend. There are some beliefs that the sun and the sun, S-U-N and S-O-N,
S-O-N, yes, exactly.
are one and the same.
Yeah.
And that contextually, if you like, and the symbolism of it.
Does that make sense to you in that sense?
I mean, I can understand it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it isn't, I don't think of the sun as in, oh, that's Jesus.
Right, okay, yeah.
Do you think people respond to symbols when they're buying things or signing up for? You do, huh?
I think so.
On an unconscious level, or?
You see a symbol that makes you feel good,
Mm-hmm.
because, and then you are attracted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will, and equally symbols will turn you away from things if they're symbols that you've had a bad deal with. That just that shape is an appealing shape, more so than a circle.
That sign somewhere, you know, just orchid. Because I was looking up higher at the ram. What are you studying here on the university, by the way?
Aeronautical engineering.
French. What I wanted to ask you guys is if you ever noticed that the sun symbol pops up everywhere in corporate logos. BP, British Petroleum, Burger King has some, Lipton.
How do you know that can be just like an explosion in the background?
That's probably a
not
sun. That's probably a sun.
Yeah.
And Suncorp, that's probably a sun. But
if it's in the title, then obviously they're using it.
And like if it's
to
plants,
publicise.
if it's plants and stuff, then yeah.
This is the first time I've actually seen like
seen it
seen
compiled
like this.
like that,
Yeah.
Does it like stand out to you and say,
Oh, now
it
it
is
like
popping up
now it
everywhere?
does really.
Yeah.
But
I guess so.
at first, not really.
What do you think of it when you see it like this? Because this is like, what, 20, 15 examples maybe of hundreds, if not thousands,
Yeah.
Of corporate logos.
I think the shocking one for me is Microsoft. Didn't actually see like the
Windows, yeah.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think? Do you think it's appealing to people?
Making you feel a bit happy.
Happy,
Because
it brings happiness for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. Like in a logo, for me, it doesn't really affect me that much. Like what the logo looks like, particularly.
Not only here on the campus, but also around the abbeys and cathedrals of down here in Bristol, you know. So we want to see how people perceive that and what their take on it is, pretty much.
Yeah.
Is that fine?
Yeah, that's
Right.
brilliant.
Thanks very much. We're in Bristol and looking around. We even discovered ourselves. We have a sun even on the Bristol University emblem right there at the top, right? Obviously, it's an ancient symbol. It comes up everywhere. The sun crossing religion. It's behind Jesus and Ra, ancient Egyptian, Indian, cultural. The Pope carries one. Obama uses one in his campaign. But the thing is that what we discovered as well is that it comes up everywhere in corporate logos everywhere as well.
Well, I think when it concerns an institution or a company, the sun motif is a very important thing, because after all, we relate to the sun in this way. It's a giver of life. Although it has a finite time, it does infer perpetuity.
Right.
That there is a future. And I think for an institute or a company, this is why there's a proliferation of the sun motif in a lot of their logos.
Yeah.
In terms of products themselves, I think it's appealing to the consumer in this sense that a lot of thought has gone into it. Right? There's something about the product where it's been taken seriously and it can relate to their life or their lifestyle in some way, in a positive way. If I become really capitalist on you, having the sun motif in a lot of these logos is appealing to the shareholder. Because again, it draws off this inference that there is life or a vision for the company.
But that's on a subtextual level. That's more subconscious in one way, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I would say so.
Yeah.
We have this, it's actually coded in our primal consciousness. The first monotheistic effort was based on worship of the sun.
Of the sun, yeah.
So I think this is a primal coding that we all have, and we're instantly drawn to it as such.
I even noticed that you guys here on the University of Bristol emblem right at the top have the sun right there, you know. Why do you think that all these corporations are using the sun?
I guess from like what you've shown with all the pictures of it,
in like ancient and older stuff, I guess there's some sort of cultural link that we have.
So nice and sunny.
Do you guys think it's more appealing to put the sun into corporate logos? Do you think it helps to sell the products? What's your thought on this?
Yeah.
I would definitely agree. Obviously, there's very powerful symbolism, a very clearly an innate realization in the human subconscious or whatever that is a symbol of power or a symbol of life or something like that. You only have to look back those examples that you gave before of 6,000-8,000 years ago in Egypt when it was a very prominent symbol, and it's clearly continued in the human mind, psyche.
It's just a very ancient symbol. It's been around, obviously worshipped back in ancient times. Very, very obvious, prominent symbol. Biggest thing in the sky by a long way.
Right. Yeah.
So I think just turns out why people decided to adopt it, I don't know. Yeah, and I'm not sure I see some of these as being suns. Yeah, people see the sun as a fairly positive thing. Circles are quite a nice, positive, happy sort of shape as well. You look at the sort of smiley face and things.
Of course.
The square and compass itself is the Star of David, and it's also two pyramids. So you have the one pyramid and you have the second pyramid enclosed and embossed upon each other. Sexual union as well. This is the Horus Gamos. So it has many manifestations, the square and compass. It's not a Masonic symbol. It goes back to Judaism. It is the Star of David. It goes back beyond that into Egypt. It's based on the pyramids. And it happens in television and radio all the time, because the Masons like to have a little bit of a laugh.
Well, see, sometimes I wonder if that's what's going on a bigger global
of course,
level.
having a bit of fun. They want to show their
funny
allegiance,
haha.
etc. Yes.
Do you think that helps to sell the product in a better way, so to speak? Is that why they use it? Do you think?
No, I don't think so. This is for the management team. It's not for the customer. The customer wouldn't even know it's happening, just as the audience to Tommy Cooper didn't know what on earth was going on.
Not even
It's
on
to
an
the
unconscious level?
Not even on an unconscious, no, I don't think so. It's for the insiders. So the insiders know what the corporate structure of that particular corporation is.
But you don't think that there's in us we have a hardwired kind of aesthetic pleasure center that lights up when we see the symbol of the Vesica Pisces, much in the same way the church shows to
I think it would only do that if you'd been pre-programmed to know what it was. If it was a symbol that you didn't understand, I don't see how it would do that. It's possible that they might register it unconsciously, but I think the effect, the intended effect, is to people who are in the know.
Yes.
It's like Masons giving their nod and the wink and saying, "Are you an upright citizen? Are you on the square?"
I was going to ask you about the pentagram. Sorry, I got excited. And then he put this down, which he had.
Ah, so you had your own pentagram.
But get this. It's the same freaking size as the one that I created. One shape that fits inside, sorry, I haven't mentioned my mouth, inside a pentagon is the pentagram.
The pentagon was made in that fashion for a specific reason, of course, because it is based on the pentagon. I don't know exactly what they were trying to display by doing it in that fashion.
Do you think it aids military power again in one way? Is it a magical seal in that sense? Does it aid?
Well, I don't believe in anything that's magical myself. I live in the real world. But it is hugely symbolic, and symbols can be very powerful.
Are you guys familiar with the all-seeing eye at all? Have you seen that before?
I think I've seen that.
You guys are familiar with the MI5 and MI6, right?
Mhm.
Secret Service. They have the crown in the center, obviously, but they have the eye. You see that? Right on top of the pyramid in the capstone?
Yeah.
You see that? I don't know if you can pass it around or something, you know? Have you ever heard about the Illuminati, for instance?
Oh, you guys haven't?
Never?
Huh?
Oh, God. Have you guys seen National Treasure?
Yes.
You have?
National
Do you
Treasure.
recognize that symbol? That's the backside of the dollar bill.
Aha.
And we have tons of logos, right? All kind of major corporations, Google Chrome. But what do you guys think? Why do you think it's so prominent as a symbol? Any ideas or theories about that at all? Does it feel brand new to you that it's brought to your attention for the first time?
It does feel
noticed
new.
before, yeah.
It really?
Not really.
No, but now you've noticed it.
Yeah, now you've said, yeah.
You can see it. I think maybe they use it because it's quite easy, maybe? It's just a triangle and eye.
I feel like I've seen it before, but never really paid attention to it.
Secretly grabs your attention.
Yeah, so like you see it and you just feel like you've seen it before, so it's like, I don't know, like obviously not new, but you just sort of zone more into it rather than if it was like a brand new thing you think, oh, don't really know what that is.
I've seen Nickelodeon loads of times, but I didn't even realise
I've seen the eye on it now though.
Or a Horus, the mythological snake who eats its own tail. It's used in so many different logos here as well. Alfa Romeo, this is actually a snake devouring a human being right there if you look closely.
Really?
Yeah, look at that. You see that?
Isn't really something nice to think about, really, is it?
Is it something evil? Is it?
Yeah, and the fact that he's eating a human here.
I don't know why they'd use it for medical stuff.
Yeah.
Though. Look at my SIM card differently now.
I think they might do it to like as a way to sort of play with your subconscious minds, perhaps because they're all like really familiar things.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. When you see them all sort of like together, you think, oh God.
There is definitely a reason. They wouldn't all just use the same symbol for no reason. What it is, I don't know, and it's probably something quite sinister.
Yeah.
Perhaps they're all sort of symbolisms of power, and maybe that sort of makes people trust them more.
It's freaking me out. That feels like trying to tell me something.
I've got no idea.
No idea at all?
No, absolutely no.
Have you seen it before?
No, I mean now you show me. I can see there's pyramids there, but or triangles there, but I've got no idea whatsoever.
Why?
Why?
I can't see why they would use all those triangles.
But no guess whatsoever? Like, do you think it's a potent symbol? Is it a reason for why they're using it? Does it work in some way, do you think? Does it help to sell products? What do you think?
Well, if they're all using it, it must do, mustn't it?
I have no idea.
Well, it's like subliminal messages on the TV, I would imagine.
right.
I guess you familiarise yourself with certain objects, so you'd be probably more attracted to a sign with a familiar shape or definition to it.
But they just have the same marketing departments. I agree with him. I'm sure it's all subliminal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just repetitive slogans, all the kind of catchphrases. I'm sure that comes through. All these signs probably come through. A lot of these are well-established brands, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you follow other people? I'm sure you do. The best compliment you ever give anyone is mimicking it.
And what I think you've done now is I think you've scarred me. I think I'm going to be forever looking for triangles and eyes now in everything I say.
Do you want to know more about symbolism? Take a look at our third episode of RedIceTV on movie symbolism connected to the pyramid and the eye. We also suggest that you listen to our radio programs with Robert Hieronymus, Pierre Sabak, Michael Tsarion, Steve Wilner, Freeman, M.G. Lord, Neil Hague, Jordan Maxwell, Dennis Fetcho, Neil Kramer, Peter Taylor, Leo Rutherford, Ralph Ellis, and others for a deeper investigation into the topic of symbolism. Thank you to all our members for making this episode possible. RedIceCreations.com